Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gotland Game Talk, organized by the Department of Game Design, Uppsala University, Campus Gotland. Gotland Game Talk, for those of you who have joined us before, is a interview series where we this semester talk specifically to representatives and professionals in the field of game design, game development, and game production. And the focus specifically for this series, this semester, is Sweden's game design and development clusters, hubs, and communities. The purpose of Gotland Game Talk is to provide opportunities for students, staff, faculty, and everyone interested to get in touch with these industry professionals and also get the opportunity to talk to them. Today, we are going to talk to Daniel Wilén from Arctic Game, and we are going to learn about the game industry in northern Sweden and how Daniel, who is the managing director, has been part of taking that development community from only 5 game studios to 72 in only 5 years. And Arctic Game is a regional game development community, as I said, in northern Sweden, whose purpose and goal is to build a strategic platform for growing the game industry in northern Sweden. And that includes business development, investment support, education, events, and collaboration. And I will stop talking now and immediately go and introduce our guest, Daniel Wilén. Welcome to Gotland Game Talk.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here. Really nice. Based up in the north of Sweden, as you probably know, managing director for Arctic Game. And yeah, it sounds so cool when you say what we have accomplished. It sounds even cooler when you say it. So hopefully I can shed some light regarding what we've done, what we have done right, what we have done wrong, and perhaps things we would like to share with others.
Yeah, and we're really looking forward to hearing it. But also, I thought we could start talking a bit about you, who you are, what your background is, and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, gaming has been a passion for me since childhood. I guess it started with the NES. I mean, I'm 46, so basically I have been playing games since childhood, and remember the feeling of being totally amazed about what you could experience with the first Nintendo games, for example. I mean, Excite Bike. That I can still feel what I felt back then, and through there, towards the C64 and then the Amiga, and then the PCs came, and I started being a bit interested in doing things with the computer as well. So for me, gaming has been a passion, but not professional, just like a consumer. So I'm actually quite new in the industry, which means that there are still a lot of things that I don't know anything about. There is still a lot of things that I'm learning. But what is so cool about this industry is that you can actually do some value and create some value nevertheless. For me, I have my background in the creative agency field, sort of. So I've had an ad agency, design agency before this, and built that up together with a few partners, from a few people to about 40 people, and experienced what it is to grow a firm from basically nothing to everything, and then go the other way in the other direction as well. So I know all about the ups and the downs. Finally, I exited from that venture as I got the opportunity to actually join this industry. And this was in 2019. I had been experiencing a bit with my own sort of YouTube channel in gaming, just to learn the media. And through there, I found and met and got to know a few influencers. And as we had an event up here in the north of Sweden called Nordsken, that is a really special event around gaming culture. I got the opportunity to work with a few influencers to bring them here to the region, to show them what's going on here, and to have them sort of basically tell the world what we are doing up here when it comes to gaming culture and you could say geek culture in a sense. I mean, everything surrounding that. And one thing led to another, and suddenly someone said that, you know what, this industry that we are trying to create here, would you like to sort of take charge of that and build that further together with us? My first response was, no, I can't do that. I'm an entrepreneur. I have employees, you know, and I have to take care of my company. And then driving home from after that call, I was like, but this is what I've always wanted to do. So I need to do it. And that was the end of my former life and the start of my new life, basically.
So what did the game industry in the north of Sweden look like when you came into that world?
Yeah, back then, I mean, it was actually it was already happening then. So I can certainly not take all the credit for what's been going on here. It's been a huge effort from a few passionate people from the day of, I mean, basically, I think back in 2015, 2016, that's when it really started. The thing is that Skellefteå as a city was at that time looking at how they could grow, because they were sort of declining as a city, and needed to see how can we attract and keep young talent. And they realized that they had about 3 educations within gaming and VFX that actually were exporting a lot of talent to Stockholm, Malmö, to Vancouver, Toronto, Hollywood. I mean, hotspots for games and film and the VFX industry. And they realized that they had been exporting, like, I don't know, up to 1,000 people through the years to these sort of hotspots for these interesting industries. And realized that if you want to grow as a city, you shouldn't send young and talented and well-educated people away. That's sort of the opposite of what you should do. But how to keep them? Well, they needed an industry. So they asked themselves, how can we actually create an industry? And what you do then, I mean, you start digging where you stand, basically. So they realized they had a lot of gaming culture, and they had the talent that had the potential to stay, but not the reason to stay. So they started looking at what you could do to sort of create an ecosystem to keep the talent in the city, but realized quite quickly that as one city in northern Sweden, you're too small to actually make something sustainable. So they joined forces with the neighboring cities. So in 2015, Umeå, Skellefteå, Luleå, and Boden joined forces and created Arctic Game Lab, now known as Arctic Game, to together try and build an industry around gaming. So that's basically how it started.
So it sounds like it really came out of a clear need or a crisis even for the region, bleeding talent.
It's really a crisis. Yeah, I mean, most innovation happened through crisis, right? I mean, if you're really in trouble, then you need to do something, and you need to do it fast, and you need to do it by disregarding the rules, you know, or whatever. You just need to make it happen. And I think that crisis that you mentioned, that's one important sort of aspect that made it work. The other one is passionate people. I mean, what we in Sweden call eldsjälar. I don't think it's a good sort of way to say it in another language, but I mean, passionate people that just go far and sort of beyond what they would otherwise to help their hometown, their home region, and their sort of favorite interest or whatever. So we had a few of those people. They are still around here, and they were around and sort of started this initiative before I jumped in, by trying to sort of attract people from their homes or businesses or jobs or whatever by creating cool events around this area. I mean, for example, creating game jams, that simple thing. I mean, making people that share the same interest meet together and create something together and see what happens out of that. Sometimes one idea led to a project, another project led to a company, and so forth. And all of a sudden, people needed office space. So yeah, we could start trying to make that happen, starting with a couple of offices at the campus, building it, I mean, evolving it further by attracting more funds from the different municipalities and the region to actually try and build an ecosystem. So the challenge have been that as we are working as a region, you have 4 different cities with one sort of mutual agenda, but also 4 different agendas, because that's how cities work, right? So what I think is good about Arctic Game is that we have this understanding that to succeed, we need to do it together, because no one can do this alone. I mean, we can't compete on a global market city by city. We need to do it together.
And it sounds then like it was very much the community came first, and you started to doing stuff, making things happen, and out of that grew. I mean, out of that came businesses and industry and teams and companies that then needed more support structures.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it is, because when you start with a culture, then you start from the right starting point for gaming. I mean, if it's tech startups you're building, that might be the total wrong way of doing it, because you might need to start at a different end of that problem. But when it comes to gaming, you need to start with the culture. You need to start with the ideas, the IPs, the passion for building games, because out of that will come business, not the other way around. I mean, we have seen other initiatives trying to start from a business perspective, but sort of not succeeding, because if you start with business, or if you start with gamification, where's the passion for gaming that you actually need to attract the talent? That's pretty hard. So we realized pretty fast that talent is really the key to everything, which means that by attracting talent, you can attract more ideas, and you can attract more capital, and you can attract establishments from other studios. Because one problem is, how the heck are you supposed to attract studios to the north of Sweden with no ecosystem around them? I mean, how do you get that first studio? And that it doesn't matter, even if it's like Gotland or if it's somewhere else. How do you attract that first studio that makes the second and the third come? And I mean, we realized quite early that talent is the key to it, because it's quite easy to relocate talent, right? If you I mean, attract young people with a passion to create a career for themselves in gaming, if you give them a possibility to come and educate themselves, that's a start. Then you got them here. They have some place to live. They have made friends over the last year or a couple of years. They have their projects and ideas they are working with together with their friends. Now it's only a matter of keeping them there, getting that first funding, or getting that first office space they could use, or organizing these events that make them want to stay, because I mean, the input for them is so valuable that they need to. So that's why we have focused on education. And I mean, at the moment, I don't know if you mentioned that, but I think we have 17 educations within gaming now, in different sort of different types of of educations, like university educations, vocational educations, and even on a high school level. So there are several sort of different educations within the pipeline, and that has created something to build on, because now we can say, okay, we are sort of building a talent factory here. We have hundreds and hundreds of students currently studying game here, and that can be a way for other studios to actually establish business here, because what is everyone looking for in the gaming industry? Talent, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not that long ago you started, and in only as I mentioned in the beginning, only a couple of years, you have become one of the fastest growing game communities in Europe. So that brings us sort of into what is it that, I'm not asking you for the recipe to success here, but if you were to sort of talk more about what Arctic Game actually is and what it is you do, how do you harness this talent?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be able to share that secret sauce like something easy, but I can't, because it's not that easy. And the thing is that, and I think it's the same thing with really successful startups and unicorns. It's something in the recipe that is sort of right, but then you have the timing, and then you have this huge amount of luck that is also needed. But if I'm to say a few things that has made Arctic Game successful, I need to go back to these passionate people. If you don't have people that are passionate about this industry happening in this specific region, even if it's a totally different region than Arctic Game, of course. But if you don't have that passionate people that actually go do everything they can in their power to make it happen here, then it's hard, because then it becomes really expensive, right? If you have to pay consultants consultancy fees for every hour that is put into working with this question, it'll be quite expensive to create. So that's, I mean, that's one thing. How do you find and attract these talented people that really care for this region specifically? Because you need to engage them. The other thing I think we have done quite good is to actually understand our stakeholders. It's basically one-on-one when it comes to sales, right? I mean, you need to understand the client and their problem, whatever they need to solve. For us, it's like, okay, we have the students. What do they need? What can we help them with? We have the politicians. What's important for them? What are sort of the most valuable arguments for them to find funds for us or whatever? And you have the game companies, the studio startups and the established studios. What do they need and what's in it for them? What's the value for them? And I think we have been quite proficient to understand sort of their needs, their drivers, and their passions, to understand how to build an ecosystem that caters to these different stakeholders. When it comes to students, of course, it's really valuable for them to be close to the companies that will employ them later on. So having guest lecturers and from the industry, having trainee positions with studios present in that area, having, you know, simple events like board game nights or afterworks or whatever that makes it possible for the students to meet the studios. That's extremely important, and that's how we have attracted talent. Saying, okay, here you can educate yourself close to the studios that will employ you or that you can collaborate with later on. So that's one thing. When it comes to the politicians, of course, they think that gaming is really cool. Everyone thinks that gaming is cool, but also it's easy for them to look at it from a different perspective. Like, okay, this talent and these tools will be extremely valuable for our industry, the entire green transition and whatever. And if you sort of push those buttons, they throw money at you because that's what they want to hear and that's what they want to do. And that's good to be aware of, but it's also really important to keep educating them that if we don't focus on building the actual industry, there won't be no talent, there won't be no tools for the other industries to use. So it's the understanding of that. From the start, we thought that tax income was a great argument for politicians, for example. But we realized it isn't, because when they talk about an industry establishment with 5,000 people, and we compare that to 10 more developers, it's like, it's not a valid argument. But when we say that we are actually creating a more diverse labor market, we are increasing the attractiveness of this city and this region, then it's like, then they get it, because that's a way to these 5,000 jobs with huge tax incomes. So understanding these drivers and needs for different stakeholders is, I think, really important if you want to build something from the start.
Yeah, and that it's not really about getting the best out of each other, or trying to that you compete or try to. What I'm trying to get is that it's not about sort of exploiting each other. It's more about talking the same language or understanding. Yeah,
exactly. It is, and that's a really important point, because that is true also for the Swedish ecosystem. I mean, we have different clusters in Sweden, and it's easy to look at each other like competitors, but we're not really, because what we need to do is to attract more talent to Sweden, because that's a gain for everyone, right? We need to attract more capital and more knowledge to Sweden, because everyone will be rewarded for that. So that's why this conversation is perfect. And whatever I have learned or understood through this process, I would gladly share with anyone that want to do the same thing, because we only help each other, right?
But then I would love to hear more about what is it that you actually do then when you all come together. You have the industry, you have the regional and municipal actors, and you have the students and the entrepreneurs. What is it that you do under the roof of Arctic Game?
The number one problem that always needs to be solved is financing, first and foremost. So without external financing, so to speak, Arctic Game can't do much. But Arctic Game can have a sort of a person and a brand that can be built. But that's basically all the base budget is enough for. So what we need to do is to find projects that can give us resources to do the activities that we need to do. And those activities are events, as I said, events that bring students and companies together, events that can attract, for example, publishers and investors to this region. For example, having pitch training followed by pitch session for international publishers and investors to make them perhaps invest in some of the regional companies, or at least teach them something. So when they return the next year, they have an established relationship and they have learned something from that. The other thing is to be aware of the sort of the gaps in the innovation system, because as I said earlier, to keep the students in the region, you need to offer them something, and they often need somewhere to start their first venture. If that's the case, they need somewhere to sort of start that first studio, which means they need some sort of capital and some sort of coaching to get them off the ground. So working closely with incubators or incubator-like initiatives is really important. So we have worked a lot with business development for our studios. This is done by applying for projects, European Union projects, that we can so we can get funds for business development for our studios, because we are funded through a project that with the purpose of growing the industry. So then it's quite easy to show that, okay, if we teach Studio A this and Studio B this, they will be able to grow a bit or get their product, get their game out there, and they are also perhaps able to employ more people and even share their knowledge with their peers. So business development is extremely important as well. Network. When it comes to a startup studio, for example, they often don't have the network to publishers, investors, and other crucial partners to take the next step. So what we try and do is to constantly build and optimize our network so we can help our studios to find the right partners and help the partners, the VCs, the publishers, to find the right studios also. Because that's basically what we are selling when we are abroad on events, saying that, you know what, we have this ecosystem with 72 studios. 7 years ago, it was a handful. Now it's 72. Do you want to see what we're doing? Do you want to sort of come and say hello and get an early spot for future successful studios and games? So that's the offering we have towards them, basically.
And that's an interesting perspective that is often forgotten sometimes as well, because you mentioned now the international contacts. How do you see yourself as an actor, both, I mean, regionally, nationally, but also internationally?
I mean, it's a global market, so I mean, we need to have an international, a global presence. Without that, I think we're doing something wrong. So we are working to support the region as much as we can, but being out there and creating a big national and global network is one important part of that, because the perfect partner for a specific RPG game in a specific genre, in a specific sort of design, of a specific sort of design, I mean, that partner could be a small publisher in, I don't know, Brazil or whatever, and you need to know a lot of people to find this perfect sort of matches between studios and other partners. So
and from the startup perspective or student perspective, even, I assume that if you are in any of the educations in your region, you would get in contact with Arctic Game quite early on. But if you would be coming from outside, for example, you're curious, you want to move to the north of Sweden and want to get in contact with Arctic Game, what happens first? What is the point of contact, and what can you expect to meet when you get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, you often meet at events or through mutual contacts, and that's what's so cool about this business, I think, because again, I've been in this business for 4 years now, and I already have a wonderful network that I'm really proud and sort of humble about that I have. And the only reason I have that is because I've met people that sort of have shared their contacts and have shared their ideas and values and whatever. And it's such a, to me, it's such a friendly and transparent industry. And there are other sort of perspectives on that, of course. It often is. But the thing is, I think, yeah, turning back to your question, the first contact is probably almost through someone we know. Like, I get a phone call or an email saying, yeah, I talked to this and that person. They say you're doing this. Or I heard about Arctic Game Week, such a cool event, or I even visited it. How can we be a part of your region? Or I've read about your educations. Is there a possibility to move our studio or start a studio with you guys? The challenge about that is what studio startups are often looking for is some sort of start capital. And that's something that is hard to find in this sort of ecosystem nationally even. You need to either find an incubator that can give you that sort of starting capital, or it's friends and family, basically. And I think I might be getting a bit sidetracked here, but I think this is an important topic.
No, go ahead.
A problem with the incubator system, with a few exceptions, of course. I mean, Skellefteå, for example, it's a great exception of things that actually work. But I mean, there are a lot of incubators, nationally funded incubators in Sweden that don't work with games, and that have systems and methods and tools that are not at all sort of catered towards the gaming industry. And even if you get a studio that get their first capital from such an incubator, it's an issue, because if they don't get off the ground, now they have a studio that is, I don't know, to 30% owned by someone else or to 50% owned by someone else. And when they are starting to understand what they're doing and starting to understand how they can make a business of their studio, then perhaps there are minorities to owners of their own studio. And then it's a problem, because then they can't get a VC in. It's basically impossible. They might be able to find a publisher to sort of project financing, but that's an issue I see, because many studios, they get the right advice much too late. And I don't have a fix for that other than that's something that all of our clusters in Sweden should really work with and see how we can make that better.
We are already rushing towards the end of the interview before we open up for questions. But I think what you're talking about now...
How did that happen?
Yeah, exactly. This always happened on it, I promise you. So speaking about these challenges, what if to sort of sum this up, what if you would talk directly to, because since many of our viewers are probably students, what advice would you give to students approaching the end of their education and who are perhaps most interested in starting their own studio or company?
Listen to experts. Listen to industry experts. I see far too many students not listening to great advice, and it's sad, to be honest. And the thing is, if you want to do something like a hobby, that's totally fine, because you don't need good business advice. You just do whatever, do your passion project, treat it as a hobby. But if you want to treat it like a career, listen to industry experts, because they know what they're talking about, because they have done it and they have sort of been through the same pitfalls that you will come through. And I think it's to students, it's my most valuable tip I can give. I think listen to industry experts. You don't have to do what they say exactly, but listen to them, sort of contemplate, think about it.
Those are some great final words. Thank you so much, Daniel Wilén from Arctic Game, for joining us today.
Of course. My pleasure.